Hello, happy Friday. We got some vibes in the background, some cozy vibes. We got my jar of topics off site today. We got Finny here. Yeah, Finny off site with me. And let's see what we're talking about today. That is a big topic. Wow. Oh man. So, DNRS. DNRS is an acronym that stands for Dynamic Neural Retraining System. And this is a program that was developed by a woman who used these principles to cure her own really severe chronic health conditions, which included like severe sensitivities to different chemicals, to EMFs, to I don't know, I can't remember if she had like food sensitivities also, but like at the worst of it, she was like living in a tent because just being like in society surrounded by like, you know, different chemicals and stuff like that, all the things that, you know, we're always exposed to every day, even if it's just like the scents in your like laundry detergent or whatever. She was just like getting like rashes and having really intense immune responses. I think maybe she was even having seizures sometimes. I can't remember exactly. I would have to go back and look, but it was like extremely severe. And as with everybody who has these types of symptoms, the Western medical model didn't have anything to offer to her because no like diagnostic tests and everything with people like this, like they'll show immune activation but won't be able to identify like why the immune system is like crazy reacting to all of these like seemingly harmless environmental triggers. So the way the woman who developed DNRS, her name's Annie Hopper, and the way that she explains it in her like origin story is that she realized like, well, if the doctors are telling me that it's all in my head, maybe it really is all in my head, and maybe that means I can retrain my brain in order to get my life back. And that's what she did. So DNRS is basically a brain retraining program. One really common and frustrating misconception with these types of chronic illnesses and like multiple chemical sensitivities, EMF sensitivity, that kind of thing. Even like fibromyalgia and other things of that nature, like people will, I don't know, the notion of these conditions being psychosomatic will translate in people's heads to they're fake, they're not real, these are not real diseases, and the people who have them are just like making them up, which is kind of a weird stance to take. With like, it's more like, I feel like you can take that stance for things where the only symptoms are like self-reported, like pain and whatever, but things like rashes or seizures, like you can't really make that up. And obviously, like telling people that their pain doesn't exist is also awful. But yeah, anyway, so like, not a great stance to take, but it's really common, and I think it's really important to recognize that something being like mediated by the brain, mediated by the nervous system, is a totally different question from whether it's real, you know? Like, it seems like a lot of people will get it in their head that like people suffering from conditions that we don't have a good explanation for are literally like making up their symptoms, as in like lying about them, or like they somehow convince themselves that they're experiencing these symptoms when they're actually not. And, you know, I'm sure that happens sometimes. It's a wide world out there. A lot of things happen, so probably most things that you can think of as possible have happened and do happen. But I don't know, I feel like you just have to like listen to the stories of like a few people who have lived with these conditions to understand that like they would do damn near anything to get their lives back. Like they're not making it up for attention. So that's kind of a digression, but at the same time is kind of, you know, central to DNRS as a program, because like the way that DNRS is designed is to literally retrain your brain. Like it's like when you're thinking about training or retraining your brain, the like normal way that people would refer to that is just learning. Learning is how we refer to, like, learning is the word that we use for training the brain or retraining the brain. And one of the ways that we learn is through association. The whole classic, like, neurons that fire together wire together. And one of the, like, aside from association, another major component of learning is repetition. So if you repeatedly associate two or more things together, the brain over time learns a certain response to that thing based on the association. And that's basically the principle of DNRS. It is not pseudoscientific at all. It is very simple and very straightforward. And the only, like, I guess, like, proprietary part of it is just, like, the very specific way that the program is structured and designed. It's basically made up of, like, a combination of, like, affirmations and visualizations and, like, somatic practices, and I don't know if something's going on out there. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, like it has all of these different components that are put together in a very specific way that is meant to be repeated over and over and over regarding the same trigger or same set of triggers, so that you're basically reconditioning how your entire nervous system responds to environmental triggers. And it works for a lot of people, which is like freaking miraculous, I think. Miraculous and amazing, and just really demonstrates the power of the human mind, which is an as yet mostly untapped resource for managing all sorts of chronic illnesses. Aside from the kind of like lip service that people will give to like stress management and like you should meditate or something. I think that's, I don't know, I guess I'm jumping ahead of myself here a little bit, but that is one of the biggest paradigm shifting things about DNRS for me was just, this was the first time that I experienced, like engaged in a very systematic approach to improving health, essentially, that was entirely brain-based. Like no diet, no supplement, no exercise routine. It was an entirely brain-based intervention that was nevertheless extremely regimented and systematic, and it changed me. Like, I felt a difference. And as somebody who had experimented with many different various interventions, mostly like diet supplement type things, it was just remarkable to me to have an experience where I actually like felt like I'd moved the needle in some way. So that really got me really interested in psychology for a good chunk of time, where I was just like really fired up about like, do people know that this is possible? Like, do people know that it's possible to change the way that your brain works and change the way that you respond to things and change the way that it, like, change how it feels to be yourself, like change how it feels to live your life? This was just like mind-boggling to me, because even the experiences that I had had with like therapy, it never felt like they moved the needle. It felt like it was just like, you know, not actually doing anything. So yeah, that was one of my big valuable takeaways from my DNRS experience was like, oh, like you can do some stuff with the brain. You can really do some stuff. It takes real commitment and real hard work and real consistency, like with anything else. Exactly like if you are trying to change your body composition or your strength, it takes hard work, it takes consistency, it takes commitment. But if you have those things, you will feel different and you will see a difference. So, one moment. So to kind of back up a little bit, I found DNRS because I had started learning about heart rate variability, and I just had this idea that maybe the root of my unresolved chronic health issues was some kind of imbalance in my nervous system, like some kind of just like stuck in a chronic stress response type thing. So I was looking for programs that would help me retrain my nervous system, and Google searches brought me to DNRS. I will say that there are like so many like copycat programs that strongly resemble DNRS. I don't actually know which is the original, so it's possible maybe that Annie Hopper like ripped this idea off of somebody else. Either that, or all of these other people ripped it off of her, or maybe everybody somehow magically came up with like the exact same type of program structure independently. I don't know. But just something to be aware of if you're like investigating this space at all. But yeah, anyway, found DNRS. I was like, what the heck? Why not give it a shot? I don't have anything to lose. And it was also like right after my weird trippy experience on an NAD infusion. So I was definitely in the right mind state to like start a big transformational brain rewiring effort. So with DNRS, they recommend that you commit to the program for a minimum of 6 months, and it's like an hour of practice per day. So it's kind of making an hour daily commitment for a period of time of 6 months. And I did that, which shocks me to this day that I was able to like stay consistent. And I'm sure that's why I felt a difference. So the program was not really made for people like me because I was not having symptoms tied to specific triggers. But I wanted to do it anyway, and there definitely are people who do the program who don't really have specific triggers but just kind of have 24/7 symptoms, and they have to kind of like finagle the guidelines a little bit, but you know, people do it and it works. And yeah, so I mentioned this in my gluten video. I focused a lot on gluten as a trigger because it was the closest thing that I had to something concrete that I could point to. I also found myself, so this is number 2 huge takeaway from my DNRS experience, is the way that it got me to think about patterns. Could be patterns of behavior, could be patterns of thought, basically any habitual response to a given trigger or to a given situation. They sort of have this label called patterns of the past, or POPs for short, and completely different from the way that I naturally thought about things. They were not all concerned about like understanding mechanistically how a given pattern was or is contributing to dysfunction or disease. They're just like, if you can identify a pattern that doesn't appear to be helpful and is associated somehow with the way that you used to be, just try to choose something different. Just try to break that pattern. And this was revolutionary to me because I would always get so bogged down with like I would really ignore things that were kind of obviously unhealthy or obviously dysfunctional, but didn't seem to be linked in any clear way to the problem I was trying to solve. So like, for instance, if I'm focused on reducing intestinal bleeding and inflammation, and that's what I'm trying to fix, me, you know, having a weird dysfunctional pattern around like watering my plants, which is a real example. I noticed that when I would notice like one of my houseplants looking wilted, instead of just noticing that it's wilted, being like, oh, the plant needs water, let me water it, I would immediately go into this like, oh no, the plant is wilted. That means that my systems aren't working, because that means that I didn't notice that it needed water before it needed water. So now I need to like recalibrate my entire life so that I have a system in place of watering so that I can make sure that I'm watering all the plants on a schedule so that blah, blah, blah. Like, it was just like this whole like kind of neurotic thought spiral. And once I noticed this pattern of mine, I was like, wait a minute. Is this actually helpful? Or is it fine to just like water the plant? And once I noticed this, I felt so much better. And that same type of tendency, that same type of pattern, I started to notice popping up in all kinds of areas of my life where, like, I don't know, I won't go more into that on this video because it's already getting long and I'm not done talking about DNRS. I might have to break my 20-minute rule with this one. But the point is, I never would have paid attention to that in a million years without DNRS, because what on earth does my mental, like, dialogue with myself around watering plants have to do with intestinal inflammation? Nothing. Apparently nothing. And yet, the DNRS framework got me to start just not worrying about figuring out the exact root cause or etiology or whatever of the problem I'm concerned about, and just noticing things that are unhelpful or dysfunctional and just basically just treating the symptom, which was so at odds with how I had always thought about things, but holy cow, made all the difference in the world in my life, and continues to this day, long after my DNRS phase has come to an end, is still just the most helpful paradigm shift I have ever had. Because if there's one thing that you learn, the more you learn about health and about the human body, it's that there is no one root cause. Everything is connected. It's not like a linear path of mechanism. It's a tangled web. It's a super complex tangled web where one thing affects this thing, which also affects that thing. And like, you never know what the downstream effects of breaking one unhelpful pattern could be. And most of the time it's going to be something helpful and something good. So that is my second huge takeaway from DNRS. And oh gosh, it's 22 minutes. I have to follow my rule. I'm going to follow my rule. I have a lot more to say about DNRS, but I can make a future video about it. So yeah, if you want to hear more, you'll just have to check back for a future video. Okay, bye.